you an idea, that an idea comes out of your mind through your native language. So I think we were specific in Islamic basis, but he was in England, he wanted to address an international audience. He doubted his leadership, and I think the best thing was to write English at the time. But we feel that there's no problem with that, except that, let's say Botswana, I feel, yes, Botswana talent used in a European language, and we are sitting here not benefiting from such a talent. And at the same time, we have a paucity of research. Yes, there is none among us who can produce something of Mhudi's standard. And like I in my I stated in our article that one of the professors who was with like Professor Bill was saying, which Mhudi is a good contribution to this South African literature. But it is needed, his talent is needed more among these people who do not share a given literature. And he said, in so many ways, that Mhudi is a child who has served these people better. And we used Mhudi as an example. And also, the occasion of celebrating the 100th anniversary of his writing as an English way to address any issue of an African literature that is an African talent that is exiled in European languages. But these books are okay reaching a global audience, but they should also be repatriated in this period, back into the native languages of the writers and their communities. And if even, let's say this example of his writings in Setswana, Mhudi in Setswana would have been far better than Mhudi written English, where some poets were not very happy with the level of linguistic artistry of Mhudi.
Well, no, I mean, one is wondering whether the things in Mhudi, there are scholars who are seeing Mhudi as a in the volume that is referring to things that talks about Mhudi as a historical fiction that is addressing fictionalized issues and these things. Do you have a sense that it could have been addressed better and appreciated better and maybe in the language of the people that sort of Plaatje was writing about and in his mother tongue, that we could have been understood better?
Well, I will not go as far as saying that because the themes are pretty clear to read in English. And one of the characters, the chief broker, whose verbal artist was greatly admired. And when he described chief broker, he says, much of what he's saying, and much of the artistry, and the tempo is lost in translation. That means, if we were to hear Mokoka in his native Zero language, we would really have experienced higher artistry that we are experiencing as is depicted in Mhudi. But I think, for instance, themes and experiences come through language use. As soon as you write a Botswana experience in English, you will be using a kind of English mentality as can be allowed by the English you use. So some of the things will not be very clear. Especially when like you sometimes use describing sexual experiences in British mechanism. Like if Mhudi is experiencing an apprehension, which is a religious experience, and then Plaatje, when he writes in English, he describes it as a native superstition, which is diminishing that kind of spiritual power of what she was going through. Or if, for instance, just take an example where your native, well-respected home brew is described as a clever game. Clever is a very derogatory qualification. I mean, anything like style, he would have used that. He would have used that way. Well, as you know, Plaatje can be trusted with anglicizing Setswana programs. So not everything is not. The main thing is that, Batswana would desire very great that they have in the native language, right? Not that it shouldn't be in English. Because I mean, we have people like Masisi Kunyele in the city or Dion Meyer and other great Africans who are in their native Africans language, but have their works available in the European language. That's no problem.
Yeah. Well, let's move back to Sudan Boys. Sister, you wrote a very interesting poem. Let's start with the title of the poem. That's so much time it's not every day that some Plaatje would be called Rascal. Let's just start there. Why would you call some Plaatje Rascal? What is the significance of that very title being bestowed upon a person of Plaatje?
No, sure, my brother. So, Rascal is actually an incidental greeting or title that is given to people in the society who are not officially professors the tower space or the university space. So when I speak of hood professors, those are the people that we call Rascal. It is the most respectable way that you can call someone with so much wisdom and someone who contributes so much to their society as well. It's not that
President Brazil, he hasn't ended.
No, he hasn't ended at all because he doesn't. That's very political question, but no. A person like Cyril, you earn it through the work that you do for your community and the position, because Bra also means you are the father of the neighborhood, the professor of the marginalized, the one who gets, you're everybody's uncle, but also the one who gains his wisdom from nature, from life, experience, not really from books and scholarships that have been there, like in a packaged, nice way, in terms of academia and that kind of thing. So it is, most of our musicians like Huma Sigela, can refer to him as Rascal. He's earned the title, he speaks the language, there's Rajos out there, yeah, who's been in exile, came back with, limping and fighting for the struggle. So Brasol is a Spanto word. And I'd like to explain briefly what a Spanto is actually. Yeah, so in South Africa we have 11 official languages, but we also have dialects and what I call demotics, which are unofficial languages. So Esperanto is a very political language that was born way back from the 1913 Land Act, when people were forcefully removed from their land to seek work in other places where there was mining, and in that way people started to mix. So in order for them to communicate with each other, they would use all these languages in one, in one conversation so that they can hear each other. But it's also beautiful because they can hear each other, Like my Spanto has got a Zulu base. But if you were to go to a more Sotho-speaking community, they've got their own Spanto, which is called Mozwako, for example. But even in KZN, they have their own Spanto, their own, like what we call demotics in creative writing. So, yeah. So also, it's important for me to mention this because I'm a language activist as well, just like Brasol was, And Brasol was a language activist, and as a poet myself, language means everything to me because language is it's so closely linked to my culture, to my spirituality, and to my whole being and whole knowledge system. So it was important to write in a language that I understand and am advocating for.
Yeah. There's also a very important symbolism in the choice of language. In the choice of language, because sort of Plaatje, I wouldn't have imagined sort of Plaatje for celebration or in what we call Tosita. In Germany, the chosen Setswana or English, but by writing this language that talks to the movement of time, you have actually spoken of sort of like now. You have actually spoken of this relevance to your time. You are a writer from Soweto who grew up where this language is spoken. This language is symbolic of the melting pot of cultures, of languages, of migrant labor, of all
of land, my friend. Of the land politics, yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually very, very important. But the other thing, tribute to sort of like, let us talk about the themes in the tribute to sort of like, what are you paying tribute? You pay tribute to him, but what are the big themes in your tribute?
First off, I'd like to just acknowledge Plaatje's poetic beauty. He was a poet, okay? So I was inspired by chapter 5, and that's how my review came about, how this poem came about. It was Mhudi of the book Mhudi, where it is a love chapter, But also it's interesting how Brasol played around with setting there, which goes back to the language and the lens that I'm talking about. I mean, Brasol plays around, the whole book is set around nature, and nature is portrayed as mother nature, like something that gives and protects and also frustrates, but also because of that he had people in his life that really helped him. That saying, the famous saying that behind the famous man there's a woman, that was so likely for him. He, for having a female protagonist in a fiction book, so many 100 years ago, showed that he was holding. He speaks highly of his grandmother, and I'm sure his wife played a very important role. But also, the women that when he was traveling, And that's like your only shriner are people that built him. So he was also paying tribute to the women who we find in chapter 5 resting a whole lion and naming it a whole piece of land, Renosi. You know, and the poetry in the chapter as well, because I will speak as a poet as I am. But you know, since you know, the little cows, the little cattle in that piece of land, they couldn't have lobola negotiation, but their marriage was sealed by the music of the birds, you know, by the rain, by all of those nature elements, but also just show how serious Rasul was about land, about meaning, and their importance, because throughout the book, he pays tribute to nature. Really, the setting for me was a huge part of the book, of the novel. Yeah.
Thanks. I think Brian, Suzanne talks about the women who helped. So Plaatje, that's what Plaatje tribute to directly or indirectly by having a female protagonist in this novel. And I mean, at the time when he was writing, not only Mhudi, but also when he was writing Islam in South Africa, there were these women who were helping him in England, in London. Actually, I just realized now that these two very important books, Native Life in South Africa and Mhudi, he wrote them when he lived in London, during the dedication, dedication, and quite interesting, you know, but it becomes very, very important that there were always these very powerful women who contributed in one way or the other to the sort of life that we need to know. You know, not only his wife, but his grandmother, and there was only Schreiner, Gina Solomon, and others. That's quite interesting. But there's, I don't know how much time we still have left. Something that I don't want to leave out. The reception of Mhudi. How was Mhudi received, especially by the critics who came out in 1930. This was the first English novel by a Black South African. The reception must have been something at that time. Nobody was ready for it. How was the reception?
It was quite interesting actually, and it certainly wasn't the case. At one time, some of the critics were saying that Plaatje's movie was ignored at the time of its publication. That actually wasn't the case. It did in fact attract quite a lot of attention. For no other reason that it really was, it was highly unusual for a novel to be written in English by a Black South African, and there were many white South Africans, who doubted that would be possible. But there was, I think when it first came out, I think you couldn't see a distinction between the kind of popular immediate reception at the hands of, for example, the Daily Press, which was pretty complimentary. People wrote, quite favourable reviews. They enjoyed reading it. There wasn't much of a sense that, there was a political message in the book. That wasn't really picked up very much. But people saw it as a kind of adventure story, as a romance. People made a comparison, for example, with Rider Haggard, some of the white contributors to the press. There was also, interestingly enough, a review on the South African radio, which had only just started. There was a review program, and Plaatje's novel, was actually reviewed. Unfortunately, the original recording hasn't survived, but there was a report on it in the press saying that it was a highly favourable review. So I think the initial response, was a bit patronising, but on the whole, it was welcomed. There was a kind of second stage to its reception in the sort of year or two after it was published. which was a bit more critical. And I think the line that you tended to get was that, well, first of all, maybe Plaatje should have written this book in Setswana, and intended to be the linguist who said that, or indeed the anthropologist who said that. There was also a view that was expressed, probably best expressed there was a review in the Times Literary Supplement a year or two later. And the line that you got there was that Plaatje, because Mhudi is such a mixture of elements, I think that's why it's such a fascinating book. That's really why we're kind of discussing it, because there are just so many elements and aspects to Mhudi. Is it essentially a kind of oral tradition put in a literary form, or was Plaatje's starting point more of a kind of English style of romance, into which he kind of fed in African traditions and oral traditions. And I think the view that you got from, for example, the Times Literary Supplement, and you then get this coming out later, is that Plaatje, this is not authentic. What Plaatje should have done was to have concentrated on being African. He should not have mixed in a kind of romance story, along the kind of rider-handed lines. That should not have been part of what he was doing. Because there was this kind of notion of kind of black primitivism, and that's really, you should get away with any kind of contact with the European world. And actually, you then get that, just to jump forward a few years to Professor Charlotte mentioned Masisi Kunene. Kunene in the 1970s, early 1980s, was very critical of Mhudi for very similar reasons. He thought that the story of Mhudi and Plaatje was infantile, he called it. He thought that the whole thing was confusing. And that I think Masisi Kunene's view is that really the proper, what an African novel should be about, is warfare and the activities of chiefs and broader history. It should not be trying to mix in as it was seen, a European style romance. And he also thought, I think that's what Mr. Shirley said, that Plaatje should have written it in about Setswana, and there were quite a lot of other people saying that. But I think Plaatje's view was that, to me, English, is as much a native language, for me as Setswana. He felt that he had every right, to draw upon English literary models as well as Setswana and other oral traditions. So it was quite an interesting kind of critical response, and in a way it kind of set the scene for some of the kind of debates that continued later on as Professor Sean said, on the question of language in particular.
Yeah. Well, that's colleagues, I think we will have to continue this conversation because we have a round of time, the organizers are letting us know that we have a round of time. It will come very soon. So we thank them for this time. We still have a lot to say, but we thank them for this. Just cutting short, so let's go quickly. Caesar?
Oh yeah, no, thanks again for the space and for making Mhudi, Brian. We really appreciate your work towards the job, the talk like Russell. Mhudi, we also appreciate you just, pushing forward our narrative, and fiction is everything. I hear the scholastic points of view, but it was fiction, it was beautiful, we enjoy it. So thank you for the time and space and the great discussion here, Brian.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I should also express my thanks firstly to the invitation in this discussion, and also for using it to further celebrate during his birth month and during the year of his anniversary as the author of this English novel. But what I would like to emphasize is that I agree with Mhudi, when he says, all languages is that the United States to engage in intellectual and especially literary productivity, which is why we desire greatly that Mhudi should be available in this native language for this native community as a point.
Thank you, Prof. I mean, Mhudi and somehow also said that all languages are equally very important. The problem of the hierarchy of languages, and I guess hierarchy is not nature, it's not language. It happens in a particular way. And, and this is a conversation we need to have at some point. We need to talk about the infamous 1952 Conference of African Rights what has happened at this conference not have taken place? When African literature being African literature, African languages being at this conference don't have taken place. And just imagine that a person like